And is he still in jail now, or what?
No. 2 years after, he was, Germany asked for his extradition,
Yeah.
and he was sent back to Germany.
What did the Germans do with him?
I don't know. Well, he was free probably in Germany.
Yeah, they're getting more and more lax with their sentences in Germany. I remember reading just a couple months ago about 2 former Gestapo members who were charged with serious war crimes, the deaths of hundreds of people. And as I recall, they were not acquitted, but they were only given 2 or 3 years in prison. Or
That's
something.
That's right. Max Merton apparently was freed immediately after he returned to Germany. Nothing further was done. There were even Greek officers testifying against him.
Yeah. Well, I think I've probably taken up enough of your time today.
Well,
If I could
I
come
think
back,
you got some.
I got some valuable information.
If you,
As
if
well
there
as
are
your own
any other questions or things that
Well, I
you
have a good many questions, and I think that you're very knowledgeable on this. So many people I go to and talk to either don't want to talk for whatever reason they have, and there are many reasons they have,
Yes.
or they don't care. And other people have their own story they want to tell, which conflicts with the next man's story. And it's just very, very difficult for me to get answers
To get
to questions.
your material.
It seems that some people are afraid of being identified with the resistance because they're afraid that if they fought with Allah today, they'll be called communists.
That's
Others
true.
are afraid
That is
they
true.
want to protect some other background. Or
Well, that you
they
will
want to
find is
condemn
true, that those who are were involved with the resistance fighters, and there were quite a few Jews who went to the mountains. I mean, the Elas was very, very generous in hiding a lot of Jews. And many of the villages where the Jews were hidden were under Elas occupation. Those are facts that cannot be denied, but that people don't like to talk much about it.
do you know that in my work so far, in talking to so many people, only one man has admitted to having fought with the resistance? And I talked to these men who were in their 20s,
quite a
their
few.
30s, big, strong men. They fled to the hills, they said, and they just hid. Did you fight, I said? Oh, no, we just hid. We worked with tinkers or traders or...
Some will not be afraid to even tell you that they fought.
Yeah.
Some will not, because they are by... But today are times when one doesn't like to talk about these things. This is obvious.
Well, have I ever explained to you exactly the scope of my work and what I'm trying to do?
No, you told me that you wanted to write something about the Greek-Jewish community.
What I'm trying to do is what some other writers have done with the Czechoslovakian community and several others, a concise, modern, contemporary history of Jewish life in Greece in the years before the war, and the complete story of what happened during the war and its immediate aftermath. I want to recreate what Jewish life was like. Write down the little details like customs in the home, Jewish involvement in Greek political life and public life and military life.
Well, this I don't think you can get much through what I told you, except for the registration.
But what I'm trying is just tell the total story of modern Greek Jewry, because the world knows very little about Greek Jews. There are educated people in the States who say, are there Jews in Greece?
Yeah, oh yes. I get across that very often.
And so in no language at all has ever a complete modern history been written about Greek Jews.
Oh yes, in Greek there has, Molcho has written, Nahama has written about before the war. Molcho has written about it, but it covers only the period during, before a little and during the Nazi persecution.
And it's
mostly about the concentration camp.
Yeah.
Experiences of the Greek Jews in concentration camps.
And some about...
Have you seen the Molcho's book?
I
it's very, very interesting.
I have the new Hebrew version, which is
It
collected the
is
important
called, and yet not all died.
Yes.
It's very, very, but of course it is. The life of the Jews in Salonika, the persecution and the extermination, the life in the camps.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is taking from these works, everything I can glean from talking to people, and I want to make a complete modern history of all of Greek Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Because so many people say to me, well, only the Salonika Jews are important. There's nothing else. There are important communities in Patras, in Zakynthos, in Crete, in Rhodes, in
Very.
Coast. And
Have you spoken to Mr. Lovinger?
No, I haven't yet. I have tried to. I've tried to make appointments.
Mr. Lovinger is very qualified
No,
because he is the head of the central board, which is the overall community, and he can give you information on...
Well, I understand that he's not from Greece. He's a German.
Would you like another coffee?
No, thank you.
You sure?
Yeah,
I'll have another one. Εγώ θα ήθελα άλλο ένα καφεδάκι, σε παρακαλώ.
No, I forgot my watch there. What time is it?
It is a quarter after 11.
Yeah, you have much work to do.
It doesn't matter.
I go pick up my paintings at Paletta. They're being framed and have a tiropita. I'm getting hungry and I'll go on my way.
Would you like to have a tiropita? I could order a tiropita.
Can you really? Here?
I don't know if it will be good or not.
I'm just getting hungry. I ate breakfast at 6 this morning.
Only sandwich, they don't have tiropitas. Would you like a sandwich?
So you have
Cheese?
cheese?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be nice. It's like a toaster or something.
Here.
Lovinger?
Yes.
Is not of Greek origin and he came here after
He's
the
not
war.
of Greek origin. No, not after the war. During the war.
During the war?
Before the war.
Yeah.
Before the war. He has been here since 1933. Or even before that.
I would like very much to talk with him. Now, I've tried a couple of times to make an appointment.
He's a
For some reason
Hungarian.
he couldn't. Hungarian. But I would like to meet with him. And I'd like to meet with a number of other people. Now, the problem I've been having, Lydia, in the past is that the Jewish... One thing I wanted to do, double check with you, is the story of Rabbi Barzillai here. Now, I have interviewed Rabbi Barzillai, and then I've talked to other people, and in the course of their story, Rabbi Barzillai's name would come up. And what I have are two different opposing stories on Rabbi Barzillai's role with the Jewish community here. I won't say who gave me the story.
No,
it
is irrelevant.
But Rabbi Barzillai referred to himself to me as the Moses of his people here. He has written a lengthy article in a Hebrew magazine about how he virtually single-handedly saved the Athenian Jewish community, that he destroyed the lists of Jews in Athens,
Yes.
and eventually he had to flee to the hills.
That's correct.
Now, when I was interviewing him, his daughter was sitting on the arm of his chair, and I would ask the rabbi a question, and he never got to answer me. His daughter did all the answering, except when she went out of the room to prepare the coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rabbi gave me some different answers. But as they explained it, they spent some 14 months in the hills, just fleeing for their lives. They never saw another Jew, they never saw the Alas, they never saw a soul. Now someone else has told me that when the Gestapo picked up Rabbi Barzillai with the purpose of questioning him and ordering him to turn over the lists, that there was something of a Jewish underground here, not much, just one or two men, maybe 3 or 4 men, a handful, who were afraid that Rabbi Barzillai might give in and turn over these lists. And so they, before the
Germans came, they kidnapped him. This was a true story.
This was a true story.
The true story was
destroyed the list.
well, maybe he didn't single-handedly destroy the lists, but he destroyed the lists before he went, and he was literally kidnapped by the underground in order not to give away the names of people. The archives had been destroyed before that. And then he was taken away so that he doesn't fall into German hands and be made to talk. Yeah. I mean, even if he didn't want to. That is, I don't think that he could put up with much pressure. Yeah. And they had the example of what the rabbi in Salonika had done, and they were afraid that he would fall in German hands and this would be it. So they literally kidnapped him, took him into the hills, where he stayed in hiding as a Greek Orthodox priest.
Oh, really?
And he gives the story, which I don't know whether it's true or not. The story is that he lived there, and all the peasants, you know how they feel towards a priest who is a refugee and so on. They used to bring him food and a lot of cookies and goodies because he was a priest, an exiled priest. And when it was, his name is Elias Barzillai, so when it was St. Elias Day, they asked him whether he wouldn't come to church and deliver a sermon on St. Elias Day, which he did. He accepted and he went to the church. He was, of course, a learned man, there is no doubt about it. He knew a lot about the lives of the saints, and he delivered a sermon in church on St. Elias Day. That's the story he tells.
Now, his daughter told us that throughout their hiding period, they were just simply moving from one village to another. Almost every day, almost every week, they moved to another village.
Might well be, I don't know.
Now, someone else has told me, though, that Rabbi Barzillai came to the British liaison officer and asked to be appointed chaplain of the Jewish forces of the Andartes at a salary, which conflicted with the story that he told me that he had never seen another Jew and didn't know there were Jews in the Alas.
I've never heard this. I've never heard this. Might be true, I don't know. I've never heard of that.
Now, something else he told me was that he spoke and understood fluent German.
Yes.
And that he used to frequently go down to Gestapo headquarters and just sit there and listen to their plans for the Jewish community. But if he was indeed kidnapped after one meeting with the Gestapo, but this he has written in his article.
This maybe it was before because you see the Germans occupied Athens, and for I can't tell you exactly how long the Jews were not under persecution. Mm-hmm. That was before.
Under the Italians.
No, it was the Germans occupied it, and I remember we were still free and out, and we saw the Germans. They had their headquarters across the street from our house, and we were free. We were not. And the order to register for the Jews, and the point where we felt it was time to go into hiding, was on October 6th of 1943. But they had been here before, I think something like 2 months before that. So it might well be that this was at the time when Rabbi Barzillai was still free, and where probably they had asked him to the Gestapo, and he went as a rabbi. And he knew German, he knows German, there is no doubt about that. And probably, he says, this is also a story which I can only check by his saying, because nobody else knows, that he, when he heard that the Germans were going to round up the Jews, went from house to house to warn the Jews not to come to the synagogue on the day that the Germans would define, because he knew, he had information that it would be the day when they would be caught and deported. And this is he says, that saved the lives of many Jews, because he warned them not to come to the synagogue.
Mm-hmm. Now, was this on a certain day that they were coming to the synagogue, or was this just in general?
No, that was a certain day. It was a definite, I think it was the 25th of March. because this is the date on which the Athenian Jews were deported, the 25th of March of 1943.
Now, how were these people caught who were caught? Were they caught individually or?
No, they came to the synagogue.
In spite of being warned away?
Some, I guess he couldn't warn every one of them, but some people, even knowingly that they would be deported, went and registered with the Germans. They thought that it would be just registration and not deportation. This didn't happen only here, it happened in Salonika as well. There were some people who were either afraid to go into hiding or had to earn a living. They couldn't just stay without earning a living, and the Germans always gave reassurance that nothing will happen to you. You can come and register because we want just for you, we want to know how many are searching for communists. Those who didn't register were supposedly communists. So many Jews did go and did register. I have heard people saying, we are going to register, and when we know that they are going to deport us, we are going to flee. So the last minute sort of thing.
Yeah.
But that was then too late because the Germans had the names. It was much easier for them to check out. Where is this one? Where is that one?
Do you know how many were involved? How many people?
I think that about half of the Athenian Jews were registered.
About 750 or 800 then? Because there were about 1,500.
About 1,000 were killed in the concentration camp. 1,000 Athenian Jews perished in the concentration camp. So it must have been at least another 500 that survived because it wasn't 100% death.
Of course, it gets confusing how many Jews were in Athens at this time because they were coming from Salonika and other places.
Yes, that's right. There was an addition. It was a very small community. There were many who fled from Salonika, especially Salonika and Thrace.
Yeah.
Some had come through, not many, but they were here. But the number is, it is assumed to be around 3,000. That was the number of Jews that were, at least 3,000 were registered with the Jewish community. I don't mean with the Germans.
Right.
But then there was a certain percentage that did register with the Germans, when the Germans asked them to register. They went to the synagogue, they registered. And then when they registered, they were immediately arrested and taken on the spot and taken to the Haidari concentration camp in Greece.
Outside of Athens, isn't it?
Yes, it is close to Daphne.
Yeah.
And they were detained there, and from there they were taken to Germany.
How long were they kept there, and who all was in this camp? Were they just Jews, or were they
Just Jews.
just Jews?
Just Jews. Just Jews.
And who ran the camp? The Germans?
The Germans. The Germans. I was in hiding at the time. I didn't know about all these things. I only found out later. But my family and I, as soon as the order came up, we disappeared. We vanished.
Did any of these people who were deported in this batch ever return?
Yes.
There were survivors from this group?
Oh, yes. The percentage of survivors was greater than it was in the north of Greece. For obvious reason, because it was the end of the war, they were stronger to be able to put up for a certain period of time, and that is why the losses were not as great as in the north.
Now, I've heard another story that the Germans lured people into the synagogue just before Seder, just before Passover, in order to distribute flour for matzah. And they said, they had the Jewish community say that anybody who comes to the synagogue, before Seder, Arab Seder, will be given
I haven't heard that. It might be, you see, somebody who was not hidden at the time might be able to give you more information, because as I say, this maybe came through as echoes.
I'd like to find somebody, because I only hear about this from people who weren't involved. So I'd like to find someone who was deported in this group to find out exactly what they heard, what happened to them. Now,
I will try and find somebody who has been in the camp. I think I know
an Athenian Jew who was
an
deported.
Athenian Jew who was deported, yes.
Great. Now, back to Rabbi Barzillai. When the war was over and he came back to Athens, it's my understanding that he was not reinstated as chief rabbi, but rather was assigned to work with youth.
No, he was reinstated.
He was reinstated.
He was reinstated, but Rabbi Barzillai had at that time many difficulties with the community. He was always on a fight with them, so on and off he has had various assignments. What you say was after he left Greece because he was not satisfied with the community, went, I don't know to which South American country, and when he came back he was never reinstated to his original position, and that is when they told him to be a teacher, to work with young people, children in the school, in the Jewish community, teach them, and that is when, at which point he was. There was another rabbi that had been brought in the meanwhile. And from that time on, I mean, after that he had an unfortunate well, you could call it a love affair. He fell in love with a woman that was much younger than he was, and they were married eventually, and that was one...
About this scandal. She was not Jewish, was she?
Oh yes, she was Jewish. She was Jewish, of course, but her brothers, they said, there was a story with her brothers. One of her brothers was supposed to have been a collaborator of the Germans. This is information. I cannot tell for sure. But she was definitely Jewish, and she was a teacher, actually. That's how they met. She was teaching the children because they had, at that time we didn't have the Jewish school. It was after school, you know, Sunday school, a sort of a Sunday school, and they gathered the children together, and she was the teacher. And that's how they got to know each other, and how he fell in love with her, and how they were married. Everybody warned him that, I mean, she's younger, aren't you afraid? Oh, no, he said, I'm pretty strong. Well, this was a terrible flop. He says that she took all the money he had saved. She has told terrible stories about him. The fact is that his prestige had completely vanished, so even to go back to the community, they didn't want to take him.
Yeah.
So that was finished with his career in the community, and they just gave him, after that, he is now on a pension. The community continues to pay his salary, but he is not active.
We've noticed in the synagogue that he's not warmly welcomed by people.
No, the community has had more than enough with him.
He seems to be ostracized within the community.
Yes, that's true. His scandal with that woman, of course, made him lose a lot of prestige and a lot of...
I've heard a great deal about this scandal, and each time I hear about it, it's wilder and wilder. Like, well, once I was told that he had married a prostitute from Piraeus, and, you know, that's how gossip goes.
Well, she was not she was Jewish, all right, but they say she wasn't exactly the purest of the pure. She was a divorcee or something. I don't remember exactly what the story was. Anyway, the fact is that she was not at all welcomed by the ladies of the Jewish community. She was not considered, I mean, the proper wife of a rabbi.
Now, Rabbi Barzillai was also telling me that before the war, during the Metaxah era, that he had a very close relationship with Metaxah, and that when he preached in the synagogue, that there would be as many Greek Orthodox there to listen to his his sermons is there would be Jews.
I don't know. I was too young at the time.
And you weren't here either.
I was here.
Oh, you were?
In the Metaxa, yes. I came here in 1933 from Salonika. 1933, that was before Metaxa's time. It was 3 years before Metaxa, and then Metaxa came into power, but...
Now, there's some interesting angles on Metaxa, which I don't know. You know, to find a history book on modern Greek history,
Yes.
it's a very difficult thing. When you do find it, it's going to tell one man's opinion or another man's opinion rather than one's view.
Right, and history is that. I mean, you corroborate information and then you try to find out what really the truth is.
But in Greek,
Even they
history
say
is
that
specific.
today even certain facts are not exactly as they are narrated in the history books. So you never know
Everything's so
really. It's
subjective.
confused. It's subjective. Exactly.
But
It's
the
the opinion. What would you like to know? What his attitude, what Metaxa's attitude
Yeah,
towards
the
the
little I
Jews
know
was?
is that he was a fascist dictator.
Oh,
And then he was,
absolutely,
that
absolutely.
he was a man who considered himself in the line of Mussolini and Hitler.
Yes.
Although he was a nationalist, this is why he rejected the Italian surrender ultimatum. But
Yes.
there's still, he was...
That was I would say now, the story of course will tell you that this is the case, that he was a great patriot and he was the one that gave the illustrious Ochi
yeah.
to the, but that
it
is
wasn't-
not exactly true.
It
That
wasn't
is
for
not.
reasons of real patriotism.
He was the one time when he was forced to do so by public opinion.
I see.
Lydia?
Now, Metaxa, a fascist dictator, must have had a Jewish policy or program or something.
It was definitely anti-Semitic. A definitely anti-Semitic policy. I wouldn't say, no, there were little things, and he didn't apply the same methods to every city. For instance, Athens was in a different condition than Salon. One striking example which really hurt all of us was the fact that the Jews were not permitted to be members of the Greek youth movement.
Now, this was a Hitler Youth movement, wasn't it?
Well, sort of. One of the first, like the Italians had or like the Germans had. Jews were not permitted to be members of. Very strongly so, more in Salonika. Here they started by making some exceptions. In which way? That the children who were in school, I remember my sister, for instance, she was a member of the youth movement. Because she was in school, she was enrolled with all her class.
Mm-hmm.
I never was because it wasn't permitted.
Mm-hmm. Now, you know, that reminds me, a couple of weeks ago in the Athens News, there was a picture of a woman cutting a ribbon at some ceremony. And to the left of her was standing an aged gentleman. And the Athens News, very oddly, said, standing next to her is so-and-so, Metaxa's dictator of his Hitler Youth movement. I found it odd that it should refer to this man in this way because it had nothing to do with the ceremony.
Yes.
And I had never before run
He
across
he was an important member of this, at this time, Kanelopoulos. He was a leader of the youth movement, yes.
Now, what was this youth movement exactly? What did it do and what did it teach its young people?
First of all, it was highly patriotic, nationalistic, and it was like any other youth movement, the love for the country and hate for anything that wasn't Greek.
Including Jews.
No, not so clearly indicated, but Jews are not wanted. They were not wanted. That was one of the things. Even though there was no other obvious anti-Semitic move, this was definitely, and it was a fear on behalf of the Jews that maybe Metaxa would side with the Germans in their methods of elimination of the Jews. This was actually the only indication, because I cannot say that there has been any other discrimination against the Jews except this non-registration with rationalistic youth movement.
Greek Jews were aware then of the Nazi persecution of Jewish communities in Europe?
Yes, yes, of course. Deportations. We had many German Jews that used to come through here in flight.
Let me turn this over.